Hi there. So for this assignment, we're supposed to speak about a time in our life we had a battle where we used a specific piece of the spiritual armor to help us. I can't remember a time when I used just one specific piece of the armor, but I wanted to speak about the time when I first started learning about spiritual warfare and trying to apply it into my life. So it was the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, when I first started becoming curious about the Bible and wanting to read it and getting to know God. At that time, I was living with my ex-fiance. We'd been together for a little over 5 years, and we had 2 kids together, and we ran a construction company. And at the same time, I was getting to know God better. He started using meth, and it just progressively got worse and worse. But I remember I would start my mornings reading the Bible. I went through the New Testament first, and then I read the Old Testament. So I'd read a little bit every morning, and then I would go into my closet and I would pray. And I printed out this generic prayer about spiritual armor. You know, it went over the helmet of salvation, breastplate of righteousness, belt of truth, shoes of the gospel of peace, sword of the spirit, shield of faith. And I would recite that. And I was very sincere, and I wanted it so bad to help my fiance in his addiction and to save our family. And I would just pour my heart out. And I remember I would go around the house binding demons in the name of Jesus. And I remember looking out my playroom window at the pole barn where he would spend the majority of his time and binding demons. And I remember he would be in a different room, and sometimes I could just feel this negative energy. I know it was demonic energy, oppression over me, and I would just quietly, and I always kept it to myself. I wasn't very vocal about it, but it was something I did quietly. And things just kept getting worse and worse. And I remember this one particular night, I went out to the pole barn after I put the kids to bed, and this was towards the end before I got my protection order. But I still wasn't living a very Christian, godly life. I was a drunkard. I would, end every night slamming vodka or smoking a bowl of weed, and then I would start my mornings with Jesus. So I wasn't doing everything perfect, but I know it's a process, and Jesus was helping me through. But this night I went out to the pole barn, and I had a few drinks, and I'm a soft-spoken person, so I wouldn't really yell at him a lot, but I would say things like, "Tom, this is crazy. It's getting out of hand. We're going to lose the house. You need to get back to work." He would tweak on vehicles for days, and just everything he touched, it was just destruction. It would just, something else would break, something else would break. Something was always wrong, and it was just chaos. And we had been in a few physical tussles at this point, and he was just getting worse and worse. And I remember I said something to set him off. It was like walking on eggshells this night. And he picked up this breaker bar, and I swear I thought he was going to kill me. He said, "I want to beat your head in with this breaker bar." And there was dudes in the front of the pole barn. I don't know who they were. I couldn't see them because of the vehicles. He didn't care who he was around, and he was threatening to beat my head in. And I stood up and I said, "I bind you in the name of Jesus Christ." And his demeanor just instantly changed. Like, he was still angry, but it just settled a little, and he dropped the pipe, and I just walked inside. I didn't say anything else, and I could hear these dudes snickering like, "What'd she just say?" And, people will and I remember seeing his eyes. They were just dark black, and people would say, "Oh, it was just the meth that made him like that." And I know it played a part in it, but I also know it was spiritual. There was a few other times where just creepy things would happen. This one time he was on this bender for probably 4 or 5 days, and he would come inside to sleep at night, and that's how this cycle was. He would be out there for days, and then he would come in and sleep for 2 or 3 days. And this happened a few times. One night I remember I put the kids to bed, and he was sleeping, and he was a hard sleeper. It was very hard to wake him up. And he was sleeping, and I laid down in bed, and I just put my hand on his chest, and I just started praying quietly in my mind to Jesus to save him, to just whatever. I was praying in my head quietly. I didn't say anything out loud because I didn't want to wake him up. And he just quietly started growling under his breath, and it just got louder and louder, and it scared the crap out of me. And I turned on my light, and I shook him awake, and he just kind of mumbled and rolled over and went back to sleep. But because of that experience, and I know I didn't do things perfectly, but I know Jesus was definitely watching out for me. And yeah, so I know spiritual warfare is real.